Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Executive Insights by Shipping and Freight Resource. Today, I'm very excited to have a very astute gentleman from the digital era, Mr. Andre Simha. He's the chairman of DCSA, Digital Container Shipping Association, and also the CDIO of the world's largest container shipping line, MSC, and also the host of MSC Digital Talk. So Andre's been around the block for a while. Welcome to the show, Andre.
Thanks, Harriet. Thank you very much for the opportunity to see you and to have this chat.
Great. Let's dive straight into it. You have a background in IT, and recently, or a short while ago, you've transitioned from being CIO to CDIO, and moving from IT to innovation. So what prompted this change? It's not a big change, but it's still a change in several areas. So what prompted this?
Sure. Yeah, it is a change. Well, I started to program when I was 17, so that goes back to the late 70s, and I really enjoyed working in IT and leading the IT function at MSC for over 30 years. And, there were some big and exciting projects. For example, allowing all our countries at the time, which was smaller than today, to exchange information with each other. That was since the mid-90s, trying to make sure that we were capable of absorbing the MSC's rapid growth. And in those days, we were a very small team of about a dozen geeks. And, we would analyze requirements, propose and develop solutions, and ensure people who were trained to use them. And then when we had to make changes, we would often work all night to get a new version up and running in the morning. And we were also ensuring infrastructure and what have you. So that went, that went on for a couple of years. And then I would say probably in the late 90s, we saw changes coming to the industry. And I think in the past, technology was really transformative and game-changing. You may recall Intra, for example, in 2001 that we created together with other carriers. And this was the first e-business platform that our industry had ever seen.
Sure.
And we all had to adapt to that. We knew about EDI, of course, but we had to find solutions. We had to create standards. And of course, we had to promote that internally and externally. And then if you look at the next sort of evolution, we started to look at smart containers, for example, IoT, to try to get better quality of information, something we started to pilot in probably 2014. And even with a slow start, we still think that this will become the norm. So these were big changes at the time. And, moving to a more digital role probably in 2019 was a continuation more than a move for me, because I enjoyed the innovation part, the digital transformation part, more than the basic IT functions, which are critical. But I still believe that today's technology alone is not a differentiator; it's an enabler. And so I think that like in any transformational journey, digitalization needs buy-in, contributions from the people it affects, and it can't happen alone. So especially in our industry, which is extremely interconnected. So so the evolution of my role, in a nutshell, is very much aligned with the evolution of I would say, the change of the mindset in our industry, and the fact that there's much more collaboration between all the parties that are involved: carriers, ports, terminals, customs authorities, and what have you. And the recent EBL industry commitment is a testament of that, I think, and something that is very close to my heart. So that is the reason for the change.
Wonderful. And since you brought up the topic of the EBL, DCSA has a big ambition to make all bills of lading digital by 2030, which I think is quite a lofty ambition. But what is the what is the or how significant is the commitment by MSC and other shipping lines in achieving this? Because it requires everybody's buy-in, as you mentioned. So how significant is this commitment, and is everybody going to stick to it?
Well, time will tell. No, I look, honestly, this is a really, from my perspective, it's an incredible commitment to this 100% EBL adoption, because I think it's the first time that we all agree to do something good for the industry together, and to adopt the digitalization. It's really a very significant step forward for us and our customers towards paperless and frictionless trade, which is what, as a consumer, that's what we're used to. So the bill of lading is obviously the most important document in shipping. So being able to digitalize that end to end, including all the other trade documents as we progress, I'm convinced, will make international trade more efficient, more reliable, secure, sustainable, and of course less susceptible to illegal activities. Of course, it'll reduce costs across the board, provide better experience for shippers, for example, who will be able to choose an EBL platform based on service levels and capabilities, so they can still maintain the ability to exchange electronic documents with carriers, banks, and other parties, even if on different platforms. And that's the story around the interoperability. Now, if you ask me what it means for us as MSC, I think there's three things that I see. First of all, we're super excited because we were an early proponent of the EBL. We launched the MSC EBL in April 21 after a 1 or 2 year pilot in India, and it came at a fantastic time. Well, fantastic to a certain extent, because the
you
pandemic,
can say fantastic, yeah.
Well, the pandemic hit the world,
Yeah.
so we had to find solutions. People were sending pictures of the bills of ladings by phone, and that was a bit tricky. So I think this was something very exciting. I think the commitment to the standardized EBL takes us one step further. And by standardized, we mean that our solution will be compliant with the DCSA's data, process, and interface standards. And this is very important. When we created the DCSA in 2019, with the other major carriers, we were more than just a member. We've been very active with the association, helping to create the standards, and really wanting to impact the digital future of the industry. And for this initiative to succeed, it'll really require that the entire maritime supply chain is on board. And back to what I was saying earlier, it's only if we work together that we can make this commitment a reality. And I'm super excited, as you can probably tell.
I am. Absolutely. So what is, I mean, all this implementation is good, but you would also need to evaluate, you would need to measure, you will need to have some benchmarks. What is currently the true measure of adoption that you are seeing for the adoption of the digital choices in the market?
Yeah, that's a $1 billion question, but I think it's relevant, but it's also difficult to answer. I mean, I can try. I think if we continue with that example of the EBL, which I think can be a common theme for this chat. There's estimates that ocean carriers issue roughly 45 million bills of ladings per year, according to DCSA. And in 21, only 1.2% were electronic. Now, what do we mean by electronic? Because very honestly, I don't like this term at all. It reminds me of the 90s, and I think it's a bit old-fashioned. But what it means is that the definition of the EBL that carriers are committing to is a DCSA standard-based EBL, which is a framework for the collection, the processing, and the analysis of digital data used in the end-to-end documentation processes. So it's not just a PDF document, that people are sending each other by email. So not only the DCSA digital standards are there to drive the digitalization and the interoperability, of course, but also I think to lay the foundations and a framework to measure the digitalization progress. And what we're using today is very simple. We look at least in the case of MSC, we look at the number of original bills of ladings that are issued. We look at the number of e-bills of ladings that are issued, and we come up with a percentage. And I think that's how we're going to measure the evolution for this particular document. And then as we add other documents, we can probably, make it a bit more high level and say, this is the percentage of E that we're doing, with all the different parties.
Sure, because you can only truly measure your bills of lading because the other documents are not entirely under your purview, although you might see some of it here and there. But yeah, it would probably require an organization like DCSA to gather some of the information from the various stakeholders there. And but also you mentioned about the word electronic, but there's also the terms digitization, digitalization, digital transformation, all these being thrown around. And from what I see also, a lot of people are confused about that as well, the differentiation in terms. How do you see that?
Well, look, coming from the IT world, we're used to making up names and inventing new things or new denominations for the same thing. But I think here, as the world becomes more and more digital, and we see that every day. So my explanation would be that digitization for me is converting analog information into digital format. So for example, scanning old photographs, storing them in the cloud, and then sharing them with your family is what I would call digitization. And this doesn't really change, within an organization, it doesn't really change how we work. So we're not just creating a digitized PDF version of the bill of lading, for example, or an invoice. Here we're talking about digitalizing the entire process. So digitalization is the next milestone in that roadmap, as it requires us to make the processes digital as well, and not just the documents or the data. And I think here, if we continue on this example, we wanted to digitalize the whole process of the bill of lading management, and we wanted to replicate the manual processes to make it simple for people to adopt. So you're not changing completely the way people work. But of course, you need to update your internal systems. You need to introduce new workflows across the business. And I think thanks to that, many of our customers are happily using the EBL as a first e-document. Now, digital transformation is something which is, again, quite different. It's about business transformation. So I think a company can consider itself digitally transformed when the customer value proposition, the value-added processes, the working methods have all been redefined to make use of the technology and finding new ways of creating value or opportunities to serve maybe also a new set of customers in a way that hasn't been done before. So that's the digital transformation part. You get used to it.
Yeah. Very, very clear explanations. Thanks for that, Andre. It's been something that's got people talking. There's just a lot of buzzwords happening around, but you've explained it quite clearly. But of course, linked to this digitalization and digital transformation, there's also the scare among people that will lead to job losses, and naturally people are scared. So how do you see the integration of human capital and the digitalization or digitization process in the industry particularly? I mean, we're not a heavily labor-intensive industry, at least from a process point of view, other than the ports, of course. But how do you see that working out?
Well, I think I can understand the fear. And there's many fears which can really, paralyze people's willingness to cooperate in the change process, and it causes resistance. And that was a subject of one of my recent posts on LinkedIn. And also at a conference, I think 1 or 2 years ago, we had a vote, during the conference as to what were the fears, or what was, holding people back. So I think, humans are creatures of habit. Sure. And we do what we do because that's how we've always done it, right? So even when the existing way of doing something is inefficient or ineffective, we tend to stick to that because it's, we've always done it that way, rather than, looking at different ways of doing things, because after all, we're never sure. We know what we do, but we don't know what we're going to get when we change that. So I think, one of the ways that I find is efficient to help to make that change, is to be part of the change. And so I think someone said once, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And so that's what we try to do with various degrees of generations. And, don't look at the tech itself, but look at the end result. And I think going digital is about making people better at what they do and not taking away jobs.
And
of course,
yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, please.
Yeah, so also based on this industry focus and education and things, what do you think the future generation or even the current generation should focus on in terms of skills and development and learning new things to maybe mitigate some of the changes in employment that might happen with the digitalization process? Because let's face it, digitalization is inevitable. It's coming, it's happening, and people need to be ready for that. So in which area should they be ready? Where should they focus on?
Well, I think for newcomers first, because people that are just starting a new job, they're welcome to join us, and we'll be happy to bring them on board and also take advantage of all the digital experience that they already have as young people. But if you look at the industry, it's millions of people across the globe, and many of those, including MSC, recognize the workforce as the greatest asset. So that has to remain, I think. And if we want to meet, again, in my opinion, the two tasks of digitalization and decarbonization in the years to come, the development of this workforce is going to be crucial. Oh. So I think, diversity and inclusion is something which is extremely important, particularly to unlock the innovation parts, because innovation is about bringing new ideas and generating value to customers, and elevating the importance of diversity along all those dimensions, whether it's culture, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, age, experience, and even educational background. But that's only part of the equation. And I have in my teams somebody who is a multi-industry experienced senior leader who joined us, I think, 2 years ago. And she had lived and worked in Chile, in India, in Malta, in Turkey, and then in Switzerland. And she had very limited experience in shipping. But she's a passionate, troubleshooter, and she's always looking for creative solutions. And so very quickly, she took, some of these inefficiencies and came up with creative ideas. And she wasn't, 20 years old. So I think what you need is, you need agility, you need curiosity. Curiosity is very important. You need to be somebody who likes to solve problems, who likes to think out of the box, who has good collaboration skills, because that's very important nowadays. You need to collaborate to make things work.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And so I think, the knowledge of shipping is also important, to understand where we can innovate and create efficiencies, but it's not something which is mandatory. I think we can bring that to the new people, and it makes me think of, I see a lot of startups that come to us, with with a solution to one issue in the supply chain, but they don't address the whole picture most of the time because they don't understand shipping. So I think really it's a mix of, diversity, ability to learn fast, adapt to the environment, and of course to acquire or develop some of the soft skills that we mentioned that are necessary.
Well, Andre, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having somebody of your caliber, somebody with the world's largest container shipping line, speak about the commitment and the way to the future. And I can see your passion and interest shining through, and I'm sure that will translate to action in the industry. And I'm sure your peers in DCSA are also working quite hard and to make this all happen. But of course, it's all for the benefit of global trade and the various stakeholders in that. And I do appreciate your role, and thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge and experiences here.
No, it's my pleasure, Harish. I hope it was interesting. I know I tend to go in a little bit in all directions, but I think it's the passion that does it. So
yeah, it's the passion that drives it, and it's clearly visible in your case. And yeah, so thank you very much for your time, and wish you and MSC and DCSA all the best in achieving these commitments that have been made.
Thank you very much, Harish. Much appreciated. Thank you.